I'd have to take you back to the late 1960s for that. I was getting started in the Air Force, and I was introduced to computers really for the first time while I was in the Air Force. And when I got out of the Air Force, I started working for a financial services company. And at that point in time, this was maybe the very early 70s, computers were just starting to make an impact in the workplace. It was just starting the process of automating these back office operations of these big financial institutions. And when I saw that, I thought that this really was the future, and it was something that I wanted to be part of. So I started my career in technology programming, automating these vast clerical processes that were being done by these armies of clerks in back rooms. That's why I guess they call it back office operations. And as my career progressed, I saw the very nature of the way work was being done change in a very fundamental way, and it opened up all kinds of opportunities for business in financial services as they got more and more efficient in processing it. And then through that, I saw one revolution after another, from the huge mainframes to the mini computers, and then to finally to the PCs. So I saw one revolution after another, from the big, huge mainframe computers of the day to mini computers, and then to finally the PCs. And then in the early 1990s, I changed from financial services and went into higher education. And at that point in time, working for a very large research university, I was introduced to something that no one in the commercial environment had heard of at that time, and that was the internet. And I saw how the internet not only changed the way business was being processed, but the very way that business was being conducted. And then finally, as we now come into the 21st century, with social media, we're seeing the way technology changes the very way individuals interact with each other, and the very dynamic of social interaction. So it's been fascinating to watch how technology has made this impact on humanity and on the world. You know, I think there are quite a number of things that are going to have a profound influence on the future. But for argument's sake, let's turn my area of expertise, technology. And I think technology is going to be one of the major impacts on creating or defining what the future is. As I said before, up to this point in time, we've seen technology change the way work is done. We've seen it change the very nature of the human interaction with social media. But I think that we're at the threshold of really much more fundamental change and impact that technology will have. You know, there is a concept in the technological world that's called the singularity. And the singularity is defined as a point in time where computers will outthink humans. I mean, that's something to really think about. Computers will outthink humans. And this is projected for not too far in the future. As a matter of fact, some of the projections I saw show this as being around the year 2040, which is not too far away. And if we consider that, what does the world become at that point in time when computers are outthinking man? So stop and then we'll pick it up. So we're then at a point where the very definition of humanity perhaps starts changing. We've always defined humans, the thing that makes humans unique, as being the entity that could think. And if we now have machines that are outthinking humans, well, I guess the biggest challenge the future will present is, what does it now mean to be human? And when you couple that with the fact that the projections as we move into the midpoint of this 21st century is that these thinking machines, these thinking computers, will be doing most of the jobs that we currently define as being done by humans, even those jobs that require a degree of imagination and creativity, then what do we become as humans, and what is the role of humans in this new future world? How do we redefine ourselves to turn this into a positive factor rather than the potential negativity that such an evolution of technology can potentially create. So we're approaching I guess in some terms, a brave new world. We're approaching a world where man and machines are going to have a whole new relationship. And boy, you know, when you think about the challenges that presents, they're almost infinite. How do we create this new relationship between man and machines that maintains a new, or creates almost a new definition of humanity? How does man, humanity, use these machines in a way that does not allow them to destroy the kinds of things that make us humans? And I guess in some ways, Jenny, it opens up the opportunity for a new definition of the, I guess, non-rational or the emotional side of humanity. How does, maybe by technology taking over more of the rational work of what was defined as humans, it opens up for us the opportunity and the challenge of becoming more connected with our inner self and redefining humanity rather than as a thinking entity, as a feeling entity. The benefits are obvious. I mean, if we go back to the time when I started my career, and these laborious menial tasks that people had to do in order to keep business going, things like, you know, posting accounts manually and things like that, we've obviously freed ourselves from the labor of doing these menial tasks, and we've opened up the world. I mean, this whole concept of globalization and global interaction are just incredibly changed our world. Or we're able to communicate with us, interact on a global basis with very little effort. So the benefits to world have been phenomenal. It's really defined the way we live over these last years. You know, limitations is kind of an interesting question. I'm reminded going back to, I think it was like the early part of the last century, the 1900s, where some politician was talking about closing down the patent office because everything that was invented had already been invented. And you know, as soon as you start thinking of limitations, we amaze ourselves with opening up new horizons. So I'm not sure there are limitations, but by saying that, I think there's a real danger, because we don't really know where that limitless world is going to drive us. But certainly one thing is for sure: just as much change as we've seen over the last 50, 60 years during my career, that pace of change will continue and will even accelerate. So the world of the future will be dramatically different than it is today. Oh, that's a great question, especially in this field. You know, if I took you back to when I started, there were very few that you would say were the architects of the future. They were the big computer companies at that time, and obviously the major one was IBM. And then we got into the 1980s, and people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates recreated the world from their garages. These were two people that started with this new technology called the PC out of nowhere, and no one even had forecast or even had a concept that had the radical changes that would be produced just by those two entrepreneur geniuses. And then we go further, and we get this whole social media context with people starting things in their college dorms, like Zuckerberg. So where's the future architect? I don't know. He's out there somewhere, and it is some imaginative, creative young person who's very adept at technology, and just when we least expect it, will come up with something that radically changes the world. And where that comes from and what it is your guess as good as mine. So I assume you mean with the use of technology. And you know, we've seen the way technology has changed the world to this point in time. And like I've said, I think we're on the threshold of significant changes that really have the potential of redefining humanity. So what's the biggest challenge for the future, young generations, as technology continues to evolve? Well, I guess in some way this next generation is going to participate in this potential redefinition of the relationship between man and machines, and is going to, in some sense, if I look forward 30 years from now or so, perhaps have an evolving definition of what humanity is. So the major challenge that I see is that they make this a positive influence, and that as humanity evolves, as we move into the future, that it's a positive evolution. Because I think as we're at the threshold here, where there's the potential for a lot of negative impacts of technology, as well as a significant potential for positive impact. And hopefully, as we move into the future, the positive influences and the positive impacts of technology will far outweigh whatever negative impacts there are. You know, Jenny, I think I'm going to boil it down just to one, honestly, and that is, as we continually see this evolution of technology, that we don't lose our humanity. That as technology continues to evolve, that the human element continues to be defined in a way that keeps us the kind of caring, feeling, and dominant force in the world. And I really sincerely hope that that technology winds up being used in a positive way that opens up a whole new potential for humanity, and that it allows us maybe perhaps to evolve to the next stage of human evolution. And to all you young adults that are facing your future, make it a beautiful world.